So if you watched my last video, I had said that I was finished with my portrait of Brian Sims, but as an artist, it is always your prerogative to change your mind. A painting is never finished unless it is varnished, so you can always change your mind until that very final step. So I let Brian rest for a few days and then brought him back out, and I made some decisions about his face. I decided that is looking a little bit flat, so I added some skin texture in there and adjusted some of the color a little bit, and I'm thinking he is looking really good. But after making those adjustments and really hitting on that realism a little bit harder, the tie and the collar is starting to look a little bit flat. So in today's video, I'm going to go through the tie and the collar and create a little bit of texture and just kind of give it that little extra oomph. Not enough to compete with Brian, but enough to where the contrast isn't so off-putting. So let's get started. I'm going to get started some of these darks. So I'm going to mix together some of my Cad Red, a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm going to create a nice little purple. And a little touch of Cad Yellow. Gray that down quite a bit. Think a little bit more of the blue. I'm also going to bring in some burnt umber. And burnt umber is a neutral yellow. I'm going to bring in a little bit more of that. So I think that is going to give me a nice dark color. So now let me I am going to just give this little area a nice little bath in some Liquin. I really like Winsor Newton, and Liquin is such a useful product. It's a very fatty oil, which I like, and it's not very time consuming as it dries really quickly. So I'm just going to get in a little bit of these darker areas. I think I'm going to need a little bit more of that. There we go. I can get a little bit of texture in there. Just going to draw this down. Just going to follow the texture of the tie. And there's some little ways I could do this. And I haven't really decided. I could do little lines, or I could just do some little dots, which the texture of this tie is very this doesn't have to be perfect. Few things in life are actually perfect. I just want to kind of allude to the fact that there are these little grooves through here. I'm going to get some more of that and then start on the other side. I'm just going to kind of leather that down right there, because I will go back through and kind of move it around to where I need it. And then just kind of pushing out this little kind of jerky motion to create this little effect. Now I'm not drawing like each and every little intersection of these little texture points. So I really don't need to. I'm just creating little indications that there is texture here. Excellent. I'm going to go through that same color again and kind of reiterate that there is a line right here. At some point I kind of lost that. There we go. So I'm losing a little bit of that burnt umber because the shadows down here are not nearly as pronounced. So I'm just going to come through here. Go ahead and get that on this side as well. And then just kind of follow where those little lines in the fabric are going. And I don't need these everywhere, I don't think. I think a little bit more liquid and get this a little bit thinner through right here. There we go. And I just kind of lathered that on right here, so I'm just going to grab it. It's a little darker than I need it to be, so I'm just going to grab it and pull it around to where I need it. Because I'd already gone through pretty successfully, nearly so, of getting this tie together, and since I let the underpainting dry, so I can just kind of move stuff around on here and not really have to worry too much about ruining what I have, because really I could just go through with some mineral spirits and just kind of get rid of all of that if I need to. I'm going to come down just a little bit further and then kind of identifying there's some lines right here I'd like to get in. And I'm just gonna use that same stippling motion and kind of pull those out, indicating that the fabric has little grooves in it. And then I'm getting this really thin, so I'm not needing to repaint or reconfigure my colors here. I can just determine the color by how thick the paint is that I'm using, which is really nice. One of the benefits of using this technique. Thin that down just a bit, and then kind of create just a little bit. Doesn't need to be much. A little bit darker through here, I see. Now if you're looking on this video, you can kind of see this is very stark. I'm not blending this in too much at this point. And that is fine, because I'm going to let this liquid set, which it does that really quickly. So probably before I am done with this tie, I could probably go back with my little blending brush and then get to some more of that. So bear with me just a moment. Sorry guys, and so professional, there we go. Scroll down, excellent. Welcome to the bottom of the painting, glad to have you. Then I'm just going to do that same kind of thing, and this I'm actually going to give it a little bit darker with that more of that burnt umber. Because I kind of want the bottom of this tie to be a bit darker than it was. Because I have the suit is much darker on the outsides to move the eye upwards and into the figure, because his face is the star. Face is your fortune, as they say. So I want the tie to do the same thing. Even though technically the light is not hitting this in the same way, so it should be much lighter. If a realism purist were to look at this, they could possibly give the accurate critique that my lighting is acting supernatural in nature. And that's fine. If I wanted light to be perfect as in nature, I would have just taken a photograph. I want this to be a little bit darker. I just want to end up with a lot of variation. So I'm going to test this up here. No, it's not ready yet. I am very impatient. I want everything to look perfectly before I move on to something else. That's just not the way the world works. Okay, excellent. So I'm thinking that is looking good. And I think before... Go ahead and deal with some of these. So let's scroll you guys back up. There you go. Welcome back. I think I'm gonna deal with some of these lines right quick. And I was going to wait until this was set and then blend it out, but actually I think I'm gonna go ahead and start with some of the highlights. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and take, actually I think I'm just going to take some of this mixture that I had already, add a little bit more cad red to it, touch cad yellow, touch more. My Cadbury yellow is so thick. I think it dried a little bit. As if you can see, when you add white to any color, it loses its chroma. That becomes really stark when you are using red, because red turns to pink. But this is actually a very pink color that I'll be doing. So I'm going to, since the darks that I put in here has set slightly, not entirely, so I don't want it to set quite entirely yet. I'm gonna go ahead and thin this down with some liquid, and then I'm gonna add in some of the, we'll test it first. Perfect. Then I'm just going to add in a little bit more contrast for this little texture here. And just add in tiny little amounts. I think that can be toned down. Excellent. So oftentimes, not always, but often, the highlights of your darks can kind of use that as a guide for your darks in your highlights. So when I come to the light side here in just a moment, I can kind of use these little marks that I'm using of the dark side, the highlights on that. I can use that as a guide when I am putting in the low lights in the light parts. I hope this is coming across. I'm really wanting this to develop like a very sheeny type of fabric. So this is silk. And I want to look like it is shining and has texture to it. So I'm just going to dump some of this down and then kind of follow those lines that I originally set down when I was putting down the darks. Alright, so those are going to be my mediums. So now I'm going to add a little bit more white, a little bit more yellow, and some of that red mixture. So it's a really warm yellowy pink. I'm going to test that. Excellent. That worked out well. Okay, so since this is all still wet, I'm just going to kind of work this wet into the other veils. Let's wipe off my brush and then kind of just pull this around. Alright, and then a little bit more. Go over here, kind of do the same thing. And I'm just following those lines that I created before. And I'm not being too precious about it. All I have to do is just kind of indicate that they're there, especially in this part, because I'm not wanting your eye to linger here. The only reason I'm working on it at all is because I don't want it to contrast too much with Brian's face. Because if Brian's face is looking all real and this guy is looking like he's at a comic book, it's going to kind of be a little strange look into the audience, and that would draw attention to it. I know it's kind of an odd idea. It's like, why are you spending so much time painting something you don't want people to see? So what I don't want people to say when they see this painting is, wow, that tie is perfect. No, that's not what I want. I want them to say, wow, Brian looks so responsible and authoritative. So I'm just pulling that in the direction of these sections over here. And so as I'm moving this paint around, I'm also keeping in touch with how dry is it. I really want to identify the moment. Is it the fleeting moment when I can get this blending brush in here and really kind of do a quick little blend together. And I think that moment has arrived. So I'm just going to do and not too much, just a gentle little touch, and then just a slight little, just a suggestion in the direction that these things are going. All right, what do you think, you guys? I think that can be... Thank you so much for taking the time to watch through this video. I know that the way that I paint is a little bit tedious, but that's me. It's who I am. And if that's who you are, then I'm glad that I'm here for you. So leave a comment, subscribe, like my videos. So until next time.